will give you an update on COVID cases and HA situation. We start with Dr. Lee. Good afternoon. The hospital authority currently receives 2,915 patients in the facilities, including 396 new cases. As for those requiring isolation facilities, 584 are in isolation wards, 179 in second-tier wards, and 580 in Hong Kong North Lantau Hospital, Hong Kong Infection Control Center, 238 in the treatment facility at AWE, and among them, 271 are new patients and 5 patients in critical condition. 2 had 3 jabs. As for the remaining 3, 2 had no vaccination record, 1 had 1 jab. 13 patients are in serious condition, and among inpatients, 63 are in critical condition, 60 in serious condition, and 26 in critical condition are in intensive care units. We reported 8 more death cases have 5 males, 3 females, aged 50 to 104. 2 of the deceased did not complete the 3-dose regime. None of them was care home residents. The cause of death of 4 cases are believed to be related to COVID. For the 104-year-old male patient, he had 2 jabs. He had lung disease and cancer. And at the time of hospital admission, he was found to be PCR positive. And then his condition deteriorated. He passed away on the morning of the 4th of September. 88-year-old male, no vaccination record, DM, hypertension, and a history of stroke. He was admitted to Queen Mary Hospital via A&E unit, and after being admitted, his condition deteriorated, including a low blood oxygen level, and he passed away on the morning of the 4th. 101-year-old female patient, no vaccination record. He had heart disease, and she was admitted to Queen Elizabeth Hospital via A&E unit, and later transferred to Buddhist Hospital. She passed away in the hospital on the 4th of September in the morning. 4th patient, 90-year-old female patient with dementia and heart disease. She was admitted to Prince of Wales Hospital via AE unit. Her condition deteriorated and she passed away in the afternoon of the 4th of September. For 4 other patients, their causes of death had no apparent linkage with COVID. A 56-year-old female, she had 3 jabs. We believe her passing away had to do with terminal stage cancer. Second patient, 86-year-old male with 2 jabs. He had a lung condition and lung disease, and he coughed blood, so he was admitted. We believe that his cause of death had to do with his lung condition. 62-year-old male patient, no vaccination record. He was admitted because of fever, and then he was transferred to the Hong Kong North Lantau Hospital. We believe his cause of death to be related to arrhythmia and a heart condition. And then 100-year-old male patient, he had 3 jabs. He fainted at home and he was admitted to Queen Mary Hospital via A&E unit. And then he tested RAT positive. And again, there is no apparent linkage with COVID. As for HA staff, 197 more staff members have tested positive. 121 of them have resumed positions. And as of yesterday, 266 patients have recovered. 218 of them have been discovered, and 5 have been tested positive via hospital screening, and 7 have been listed as close contacts sharing the same ward. And about the severe mentally handicapped female ward of Siu Lam Psychiatric Hospital, we have identified a cluster. 1 care assistant tested positive on Saturday, the 3rd of September. We have arranged for all staff members and patients to get tested, and we have found 7 more patients and 1 staff member testing positive. And we are now conducting investigation, and 4 in the same ward are listed as close contacts. The infected are being isolated. They're in stable condition. The ward has been thoroughly cleansed and disinfected. That concludes my report. Thank you, Dr. Lee. Let me report the COVID-19 cases update as of yesterday, the 4th of September. For local infected cases, altogether, there were 9,869 cases, including 2,682 RAT positive or PCR positive and 7,187 RAT positive cases. There were also 152 imported cases recorded yesterday, including 134 PCR positive and 18 RAT positive cases. There were 8 new deaths reported as of yesterday, as mentioned by Dr. Lee. And among the 152 imported cases, 66 were picked up at the TSCC at the airport, and 36 were picked up at the quarantine hotels or during the quarantine period. As for the remaining 50 cases, they were picked up at the community testing center. 36 of them belong to specimens taken on the 4th to 7th day, and 14 taken after 7 days of quarantine. These are all cases with high CT values that are believed to be re-positive cases. 152 imported cases come from 40 countries, and 2 countries have imported more than 10 cases, including 24 from the Philippines and 23 from the UK. As for the remaining 38 countries, they have imported fewer than 10 cases. As for care homes, yesterday, 7 care homes recorded new cases, including 6 RCHEs involving 6 residents and 1 staff member, and also 1 residential camp for the disabled involving 1 resident. Cumulatively, 35 residents have been listed as close contacts and they will be subject to quarantine. The 7 homes include the following. First, in Tuen Mun, Hong Mo, Wulou Zhongshan, 1 resident, 1 staff member testing positive. Second, Wan Chai, Bak Lei, Wulou Yun, 1 resident positive. The third one, in Wong Tai Sin, Yuk Hua, Wulou Yun, 1 resident positive. The fourth one, Eastern District, Fu Ging, Wulou Yun, in Finney Street, 1 resident positive. The fifth one, in Southern District, Tung Ma Group of Hospitals, Jockey Club, Long Yu Go, 1 resident positive. The sixth one, Central and Western, Dongfang, Wulou Yun, 1 resident positive. And the last one, in North District, YMCA Seng Ngoi Zhiga Hostel is a hostel for the disabled, 1 resident testing positive. In the past 7 days, 53 care homes have reported cases, including 41 residential care homes for the elderly and 12 for the disabled, involving 82 cases, including 7 residents and 12 staff members. As for schools, this morning, we've received quite a lot of reports. This morning, we received 3,444 reports. 2,864 belong to students and 580 belong to teaching staff. So altogether, 1,169 schools are involved, including 286 kindergartens, childcare centers, 467 primary schools, 387 secondary schools, and 29 special schools. Now, among the schools which made reports to us this morning, 737 schools reported more than 2 cases in the past 7 days. For the 3,444 cases, some were reported in the afternoon of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, as well as Monday. 878 were specimens taken on the 2nd of September, and then 819 specimens taken on the 3rd of September, and 809 specimens taken on Sunday, and also 592 specimens taken this morning and tested positive. 346 remaining specimens were taken before Friday. Now, usually on Mondays, we have more cases because of the reports made by schools during the weekend, which is a school holiday, and usually schools would report all these cases to us.
So in these cases, we found 12 schools that have individual classes where there had been some clusters. And we need to recommend that they suspend schools, including 3 kindergartens, 5 primary schools, 5 middle schools, and 1 special school. So these 12 schools include, in the Eastern District, the Victoria Kindergarten, the PMA PM session, 15 students, 2 of them were positive. In Tuen Mun, Qingchong, Hangzhong, 5C class, 19 students, and 2 of them were positive. The third one is in Shatin, Tonghua Hospital, class 4B, 26 students, 3 of them tested positive. The fourth school in Guntong, Sacred Heart, Sao Ping Kindergarten, K2 class, 32 students, and 6 students and 2 teachers tested positive. The fifth school in Hong Kong Society of Protection of Children, kindergarten, it has 67 students in 4 groups, and 2 groups had a lot of cases, and 14 students, 3 students and 1 teacher were tested positive. And in another class, 16 students, 1 student and 1 teacher tested positive. Now, this school is a smaller school, and the children are of a younger age. They tend to cluster together, and they don't wear masks properly. So we suggested the school, all 4 classes should be suspended. The 6th school in Southern District, in this school, they had 2 sections with 3 cases each in 2B, and class 2A, they each had 3 cases. So these 6 cases all our students reside in the school, and we have listed the other lodging students as close contacts. The 7th school in Yunlong, Tongdak School, class 6A, 30 students, they had 3 cases. The 8th school is Northern District, International College, Hong Kong. In class 7.4, there are 20 students and 3 cases were detected. The 9th school in outlying island, Changzhou, class 6B, 18 students and 3 tested positive. The 10th in Tuen Mun, class 6A, 25 students, also had 3 cases. The 11th school, Beacon Hill in Kowloon City, class 3C, 30 students, had 3 students infected. The last school is a special school in Tuen Mun, Hong Tuen Mun San Hei, C1 class, 7 students, 1 teacher was positive. The teacher and students had close contact, and the students did not wear masks. So we suggested that this, even though they only had 1 case involving a teacher, we still suggested that they suspend class. And lastly, in the mutation strains, the lab tests found 67.9% of samples were L452R, indicating that it was BA4 or 5. And compared to the previous day, 64.4%, there was a further increase. In last week's samples, L452R samples, 90% were BA5 and 10% were BA4. So after the calculations, the BA5 makes up 61.11 and BA4 is 6.79%, and BA 2.12.1 makes up 5%. BA 2.2 is 27.1%. So that concludes my report. Q&A session, please raise your hand and we'll hand you a mic. Please also identify your media outlet.
SCMP. So for Dr. Ao, can we know that some parents have voiced their concern on government's plan to extend the vaccine pass to children as young as 5, while a children's rights group has also said that the scheme could affect children's long-term development. So will the government consider changing the plan? And second, may we know how's the procurement process of children's version of the BioNTech vaccine, and if you think providing the BioNTech vaccine could dismiss parents' concern and further boost the vaccination rate. And the third question goes to Dr. Lee. So may we have the latest status of Mo Lee, who injured in mirror concert accidents, as his condition has turned from critical to serious today. Could you also confirm whether what his father have said, that the doctors diagnosed have said that there was a 95% chance that he could not fully recover? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. For the first question on vaccine pass among children, the government is still discussing the details and will announce in due course if there are concrete plans on extending the vaccine pass to children aged 5 to 11 years old. For vaccination, we encourage all children aged 3 years or above aged 6 months or above to receive Sinovac vaccination, and also children aged 5 years or above can receive BioNTech. And the Scientific Committee on Vaccine Preventable Diseases and also the Scientific Committee on Emergent and Zoonotic Diseases under the Center for Health Protection has made recommendations regarding vaccinations among children. There is ample scientific evidence that vaccinations can decrease the rate of hospitalization, ICU admission, severity, and also death among all age groups, including children. So it is very important for children to receive adequate vaccinations in order to get protections, especially in the current situations where the epidemic is quite severe in the community. And for the purchase of BioNTech vaccine, the government is still liaising with the manufacturer and is still under progress.
For the mentioned patients, you asked about the patients still having care in the intensive care unit in Queen Elizabeth Hospital. His condition changed from critical to serious in view of two reasons. One reason is because of his vital sign become stable now, and also his respiratory support has been changed, and he is not intubated anymore. So for other clinical information, including his prognosis, I think I'm sorry that I cannot disclose further.
下一位，右手邊尾二。
Next question. TVB, first of all, it's been 3 days where we've had more than 10,000 cases. So are we now stabilized, and will there be another peak in Mid-Autumn Festival? And we also see that today we have more students reporting positive cases. So every day we have an average of 800, and if we have more than 1,000 students infected, will schools be suspended to prevent the spread of the disease? Thank you for the question. The first question was about the trend in the last 5 days. In the last 5 days, the number of infected cases were close to 10,000 or had exceeded 10,000. So if you look at the longer trend, we see, or we forecast, that the trend will continue. And currently, there is no evidence to indicate that we are plateauing. We will keep a close eye on the number of daily infected cases and other parameters, including the number of admissions, number of deaths, the sewage test samples, and Hong Kong U's data. So these parameters do not indicate that we are plateauing. We will continue to keep a close eye, and with the upcoming Mid-Autumn Festival, we're worried that the public will have more family gatherings and dinners, and there will be inter-family meetings. So we have to urge the public that during Mid-Autumn Festival, that they still need to be vigilant, and they should also avoid inter-family meetings. And if there are symptoms, they should not attend large gatherings, and they should get tested as soon as possible. And if they have symptoms, and even if they test negative, if they have a RAT negative test result, they should get a PCR test.
If you need to go out, If you're among crowds, you need to wear well-fitted masks and masks with better protection, such as KN95. As for schools, today, it is the third day of the start of the school year, and we have seen a surge in the number of cases. This is within our expectation, however. In the end of July or early August, just before summer recess, the daily caseload was around 3,000 to 4,000, and at the time, there were each day 500 to 700 cases in schools. Now in the community, we have recorded 10,000 cases, so the figure is within our expectation. However, we do know that there is a much higher risk of having outbreaks in schools comparing to the summer recess. So we'd like to have more precision. We require parents to have their child go through an RAT every morning so that if the child is infected, virus would not spread in the campus, so as to protect other children and the school campuses as a whole. Now, after receiving a positive report, we also conduct epidemiological investigation to see if there is a cluster, and if there is a suspected outbreak, we will require certain classes in the school to be suspended. Next question, this one in the blue shirt. I'm from Cable. My first question is this. Children's Commission members mentioned that according to some parents, after having received the first jab, the child responded quite severely, and that may hamper on the government's vaccination effort. Now, so far, about the vaccine reaction happening among children, do you have the percentage? And what responses or reactions are regarded as normal, and what are regarded as allergies or abnormal reactions? Now, BA.5 is now the major subvariant circulating in the community, and according to experts, the BA.5 could clone 34 times quicker than other subvariants in the lungs. Is it related to the severe cases happening among children recently? Another question about the care assistant in Siloam Psychiatric Hospital. Do you know the source of infection? And also for the 100-year-old male patient who passed away, you said that there is no apparent linkage with COVID-19. Can you explain a bit more? Thank you for your questions. First, about vaccination for children, we advise suitable children to get vaccinated as quickly as possible so as to protect them from serious reactions to the infection, and we will announce at the appropriate juncture details about extending the vaccine pass arrangements to children at the age of 5 or above. And in fact, there is ample empirical evidence to suggest that once infected, children may have severe inflammation or other responses such as CROP, and also acute encephalitis, and also an MIS-C, even long COVID. We have local data supporting such conclusions. And for children being admitted in hospital for COVID below the age of 11, 15% of them had some problems in the nervous system, and the admission rate because of COVID could stand as high as 1.8%, and that is why we advise parents to take their children to get vaccinated as quickly as possible, especially we're in the midst of a serious epidemic situation. So there is a high risk of infection for children. And around the world, there is also ample scientific evidence to support the two vaccines used in Hong Kong, that is Sinovac as well as BioNTech. Both are safe for children. And we also have a system to collect data and conduct assessment. And so far, there is nothing to suggest some adverse inflammatory response among children who have been vaccinated with the two vaccines. Some children may have serious allergic reactions to the ingredients in these two vaccines, but in general, both vaccines are safe for children, and parents may seek help from their physicians. And about BA.5, we note that in terms of transmissibility, there is evidence worldwide to suggest that BA.5 is more transmissible than BA.2.2 and BA.2.12.1. So our expectation is that since BA.5 has now become the major subvariant of Omicron in Hong Kong, the number of infections and in Hong Kong will increase, including children. Now, for the 7 patients and 2 staff members infected in Siu Lam, the first patient, the index patient, was a care assistant. She was infected on the 3rd of September, but we will make further investigation. About the 100-year-old male patient, he was found unconscious at home, so he was sent to Queen Mary Hospital A&E department, and it seems that from the information available, he had not felt unwell before that. He fainted, and then on arrival at the hospital, he tested RAT positive. So it seems to be quite different from other elderly patients who came down with COVID. But as you know, usually one patient would have a fever and a couple of days of discomfort, followed by a heart condition and the failure of organs. The speaker is not coming through. The speaker is not using a mic. The speaker is not using a microphone. I think that case would be referred to the coroner's court for determination. We cannot determine the cause of death as yet. About side effects after getting jabbed, usually for a child who has been jabbed with either Sinovac or BioNTech, usually the mild reactions include low-grade fever, swelling or tenderness at the site of injection. And for a small percentage, there might be allergic reactions, but so far we have not seen any serious conditions. Next question, this lady in the middle.
First of all, I'd like to follow up. The school infection rate is going up. So how many cases will there need to be in Hong Kong, or deaths should there be in Hong Kong when schools will be suspended or social distancing will be tightened? And second, some experts say that we might need to shorten the grace period for recovered patients getting their booster shots. And I also want to follow up on the children's version of BioNTech vaccine. So when will that be available in Hong Kong? And when can we encourage children to get this version? The first question was about school and staff infection numbers. We see a lot of infected cases. A lot of students and teachers are infected. They are part of the community and their risk is going up. So we foresee that students and teachers' infection rates, this will occur, but we need to manage risk. So going to school every day, having face-to-face class is important for intellectual development and social skills development. So we don't want to stop face-to-face teaching. We would like to take a precise approach to manage risk. So we suggest that parents, before they allow their children to go back to school, they should help their children take an RAT test. That can effectively reduce the number of cases entering the school and leading to further outbreaks, especially if we have no symptoms or if we have invisible cases. If they enter school, then there might be cluster effect and a large-scale outbreak. So when school children have symptoms, they need to conduct a PCR test. They should not go back to school because at early stages of infection, when they have symptoms, the RAT test might not be able to detect the virus. So regarding the reported cases from schools, we'll conduct investigation. So we want to take a targeted approach. If we identify certain classes, certain groups have an outbreak, we will suggest those individual classes to suspend teaching. We want to avoid suspending the whole school. Regarding the BioNTech child's version, I'm not responsible for the procurement. Therefore I have no further comment. Could you repeat the question? Currently, the medical experts regarding recovered patients and receiving a booster vaccine, they have already provided some guidelines, and we hope the public can adhere to these guidelines and receive their booster shots. So we'll take this information and we will post it on our website. First of all, I'd like to ask Dr. Ao. He said that we have reinfected cases. So how many cases have been retested? And how many false negatives or false positives do we have? Do we have more false cases now? Regarding reinfected cases, what's the percentage of reinfected cases? And how long can the antibodies last after vaccination? So what is the chances of reinfection when people have not received vaccination? You also referred to a 101-year-old female patient. Was this the patient that was infected in the Buddhist hospital a few days ago? So if she was infected in the hospital, did the hospital provide any treatment, and why did her situation deteriorate so quickly? Lastly, you referred to BA.5 has a higher percentage of crop cases. So what is the difference in their symptoms, and how long do they need to recover from croup? So, I'll answer first, and Dr. Lee can take up the question about croup. Regarding the RAT test, 100%, we've taken 100% samples, and 2 weeks ago, we started taking samples and looking at the data from June till now. The RAT positive cases, almost 100% of them were retested by PCR and were confirmed positive. We know that RAT, if it's positive, it's quite accurate, and it should be positive. So why do we retest it? Because we want to take that sample to do DNA testing and PCR testing. We want to identify what the mainstream variant or the mainstream strain is. And second, we also have a sampling procedure to prevent false reports or false positives. So we keep an eye on the data, and in the last 1 or 2 weeks, roughly every day, out of the samples we've tested, the negative cases are a small percentage. It's about 0.7%. So we believe currently the majority, almost 100% of RAT positive cases are real cases. And of course, we'll keep an eye on the figures to see if the number of negative cases will go up. And of course, we have to remind the public that if they test RAT positive, we will treat them as a confirmed case. But if they test negative, it does not necessarily mean that they have not been infected, because the sensitivity of RAT is not as high as PCR. So if they have symptoms, they might have been infected, so they need to get a PCR test to see if they have really been infected. Regarding the reinfected cases, we are keeping an eye on the figures, and currently 1.5%, 1.5 to 1.9% of cases, we define it as a reinfected case. That means up to 3 months ago, they were infected once, and they have a new infection. So typically their CT values on the second occasion are at a lower level. So we believe these are reinfected cases, but they only make up currently a low percentage. So if you're infected with Omicron, you have immunity, but that immunity is short-lived. And after you recover, if they don't get booster shots, then 3 months down the road or further later, your immunity decreases as time progresses. And the T cells also change after time. So if they were infected previously, and they should get booster shots to enhance immunity. Local data also suggests that recovered patients, when they get a booster shot, the body creates a high concentration of immunity cells. Regarding the 101-year-old patient, there are 2 points of note. First of all, he had heart failure record, and he did not have any vaccination. At the end of July, he was short of breath and entered hospital. He was stable at first, and on the 4th of August, he was transferred to the Buddhist hospital. And after the PCR test, we found him positive, and we believe he might have been infected in hospital, and he deceased on the 4th of September. So, of course, we're not convinced one way or the other. So the heart failure and other conditions led to his difficulty in breathing, and I believe that is the reason for his death. Ming Pao, I'd like to ask Dr. Ao regarding the schools. So aside from RAT and school suspensions, does CHP have other plans? If the figures go higher, will we have territory-wide suspension of school? And regarding the Southern District School, there were 6 lodging students, and how many students were infected in the boarding school? And I think it was suggested that 2 classes are suspended from school. Why don't you suspend the whole floor? Regarding the second generation of vaccine, what is the procurement policy? Is it you're going to procure the vaccine for BA4, 5, or BA2? Or are you waiting for the second generation vaccine? So which way are you inclined?
你嘅問題。
Thank you for your question. The first question about schools, as mentioned just now, we implement anti-epidemic control measures to stop the spread of virus in schools. And that means we recommend parents not to send children who test positive to school, and we require RAT to be conducted every morning. But this is not weatherproof because this is not watertight because RAT is not 100% accurate. And when you have symptoms, you should not go to school. And we also conduct investigation to see if we can identify clusters in certain classes or schools. We believe through these measures, we should be able to curb spreading of virus in schools. Say, if we have 10% of students in the class getting infected, we believe that there could be transmission within the class, and if that is the case, we will immediately advise the classes to be suspended. As a way of risk management to prevent major outbreaks in schools. Of course, we can't rule out that some schools may have more cases involving different classes in the near future. So we'll continue to conduct assessment on these individual schools to see whether the whole school should be suspended. As for territory-wide class suspension, I don't think the government will consider this at this juncture, because in-class teaching, face-to-face lessons remain a very important aspect of students' learning. About the school in Southern District, 6 students have tested positive. 2 were specimens taken on the 3rd and 2 on the 4th, and they last attended school on last Friday. They live in the school dormitory. They share the same floor. On the 3rd floor, East Wing, there are altogether 43 students. 2A, 2B, these 2 classes are affected, with 3 infected in each class, and we believe that they might have taken off their mask in the dormitories, leading to transmission, and this may also be due to the use of communal facilities. These 6 students reside in 6 rooms. So for students sharing the same rooms, they are regarded as close contacts, just like family members. Then they will be subject to home quarantine, and they are not allowed to go back to school at the moment. And we'll continue to monitor the situation regarding other classes in the school. The third question relates to second-generation vaccines. As far as I know, the government has not received any application for approval by pharmaceutical companies, and as explained yesterday, under Cap 599K of the laws of Hong Kong, if a manufacturer, agent, importer, or distributor makes such an application, the Secretary for Health may, in light of COVID-19 situation and the advice of the Scientific Committee on COVID-19 vaccines, consider the efficacy, safety, reliability, and quality of the vaccine, grant approval for emergency use of the vaccine. And we have not received such an application so far, but once we do receive an application, I believe my colleagues would conduct a thorough review or decide on the application on the basis of scientific evidence. What's your last question? We also note that some members of the public may be hesitant, especially those whose time is due for another jab, and they are considering whether to wait for a bivalent or 3-4-valent vaccine in the next generation vaccines to come on stream first. We would advise them not to wait, because the vaccines we use at the moment are highly effective in preventing severe cases and death cases. And this is evident from the data we have collected. The vaccines remain effective, and the epidemic situation at the moment is serious. We urge members of the public to complete the vaccine regime with sufficient doses to get instant protection. Next question. This lady in beige. I'm from Hong Kong 01. BA.4.5 have become the major subvariants in the community. Have you conducted statistics on reinfections? Second question, in the past 8 months in the fifth wave, how many people have been infected twice? And also for recovered persons of BA.5, do they have the same protection against BA.5 and other subvariants, or should they be jabbed as well? About reinfections, let me give you some figures. About 1.5 to 1.9% of all the cases received every day belongs to repeated infections. That means that they had another record of infection within 3 months. So the figure now stands at some 3,000 cases. 70% of these infections took place in the fifth wave at first. And at the time, the major subvariant in circulation was BA.2.2. But now, about 60% of cases belong to BA.5 subvariant. And we believe that the majority of these cases had early been infected with BA.2.2 and now been infected with BA.5 again, but the percentage remains small. It is not a situation of prevailing reinfections. Normally, after being infected with BA.2.2, the immunity level generated should be able to guard you against BA.4.5 because all subvariants belong to the Omicron variant. But then once the period lapses, you should get another jab. So say if you're a recovered person, after a certain period of time, you should get 2 jabs so that you have sufficient immunity to prevent yourself from being infected with BA.4.5, and if you're infected, it can effectively prevent severe cases and death cases. Next question on the right-hand side. In media, we've now reached the peak again in the fifth wave. What is the percentage of use of isolation facilities in Hong Kong? Do you have a timetable of when the facility at the Loop will be commissioned? And what should be the priority, to resume quarantine-free travel or to fight the epidemic? The daily caseload now stands at about 10,000. So we're talking about reaching the peak as we did in March, but it's still not the figure is still not as high as the peak of the fifth wave. Of course, we don't want to see a repeat of the situation in February and early March, and we do implement effective control measures with precision. For example, we prevent the infected persons and those with a red health code from entering certain premises to prevent large-scale outbreaks in the community. At the same time, the government has commissioned some more isolation facilities. In light of the increase in infections, we expect more to be sent to isolation facilities. As announced earlier by the government, the Kai Tak isolation facility has been commissioned again, and the isolation facilities can effectively receive infected persons to reduce transmissions in the community. And we assess the reported infections, and we take a tiered strategy. Those not deemed suitable to be subject to home quarantine will be sent to isolation facilities.
所謂咯。
AM 730. Just now you said you would extend the vaccination age. So when can you disclose, when can you confirm this age? And if children are prohibited from going to different venues, will it affect their growth? And in school cases, you said it's proportionate to the community cases. So when schools resume, it is related. So you also referred to the boarding school. There are 2 classes being suspended now, or are the students in the same boarding room, are they suspended from school? Do we have any side effects from oral medication? Could you tell us what side effects there are? And just now you also talked about a 100-year-old male patient. His situation was different from other infected elderly people. So did he die from old age? Thank you for the question. Regarding the children's vaccination passport, the government is ironing out the details, and once it is confirmed, the government will provide a press briefing as soon as possible. So once again, vaccination can protect children. If they're infected, it can prevent serious symptoms, complications, and ICU admissions. Now, with school resuming, they are going to have more interactions with people at school. So the risk of infection has increased. So the government wants to deploy measures and to urge children to get vaccinated. So we want to boost the number of vaccination to a higher level. So children between 3 and 11, only 2/3 of them have received 2 jabs. So that means 1/3 of children are not sufficiently protected. Your second question is about schools. We see that we believe they were infected in the community, not in the school. It's only the 3rd day of school, and a lot of students, before they tested positive, they were probably not at school. And we do analyze these cases, and we find that in the last 7 days, there were 2 cases from schools. But schools that have more than 1 case, they are distributed in different classes, and there are no connections between the cases. So the increase in school cases is probably because of increase in community cases. So students and teachers are facing a higher risk in the community. So they need to be tested before they go to school and stop the spread. So you can imagine these 3,000 odd cases, if they didn't do a test and they went back to school, then that would be disastrous. So last question. We encourage them to get vaccinated. The vaccines are safe. The side effects, the likelihood of side effects are small. The 100-year-old deceased patient, I think we'll have to wait for the coroner's report. Regarding oral medication, as of 1st of September, we have administered more than 73,000 doses, and it's going up. So regarding medications, there aren't significant side effects. It's just that Paxlovid, when that is prescribed, the doctors need to clarify their the medication history of patients, because there might be interactions between different medications. But most importantly, This medication is very effective. It can reduce death and hospital admission. So Paxlovid can reduce admission rates 80-90%. So we encourage patients to take this medication. That concludes today's press briefing. Thank you.